Senator Rosen.
Well, thank you, Chairman Wicker, and I want to thank Senator Sullivan because clearly you're very polite in your answers, but we see no sense of urgency to relate to Congress. We see no sense of urgency to connect with Congress pre-publication of the NDS, and we are the Article I co-equal branch. You have people on this committee with experience. You talk about Nevada, we're going to talk about Nevada, the assets in Nevada, Alaska. Every single state has assets that are critical to our national security and safety, and to disregard and seem no sense of urgency. I appreciate your politeness, but where is the sense of urgency, and where is the sense that you really will connect with us? I agree with the chairman on that one, and it is shameful that a letter came to us only because we probably, I'm not even sure how, but a month later, on something so important. But now I'm going to go on with my questions. I know I burned a minute on that. Maybe I got some of my time. I've been waiting. I'll take a little extra. Everybody else has, so why not me? But I want to talk about toxic exposure at classified locations. So, Colonel Borders, as a member of this committee, you've heard me raise this time and time again. I have constituents who have served in data mass locations within the Nevada Test and Training Range. Data mass locations. It means that nobody ever gets to know they actually were there. I know that all of you understand this. They believe they were exposed to radiation from our days of conducting explosive nuclear weapons testing and from toxins in burn pits. However, the DoD does not classify the range as a place where contamination occurred, despite the Department of Energy providing a presumption of exposure for their personnel who served at the same exact time in the same locations on the range, because we have both DOE and DoD at co-equal in these kinds of tests. Locations in the range, such as Tonopah Test Range, it's both the DOE and Air Force installation. And because their service records are masked, these veterans, our veterans, can't even prove to the VA they were ever stationed there, can't talk about it. This leads to denial of benefits while DOE employees are covered. The Senate NDAA contains a few of my provisions, thank goodness, to address this issue, including classifying the knitter as a place where contamination occurred, requiring the Secretary of the Air Force to identify everyone who served within the knitter since the date of the first nuclear test on January 1951, or in January 1951, excuse me, establishing a process for them to provide proof of their assignment, and requiring the DoD to document all toxic exposures, including those that occurred domestically, into a service member's ILR. It's critical that these folks get their benefits. So, Colonel Borders, if confirmed, will you work with me on this committee to ensure that the Department of Air Force does a couple of things? First of all, provides a presumption of exposure at relevant Air Force installations, classifies them as locations where contamination occurred, and such as those places where the Department of Energy has already done so for their personnel, we would have parity with the Department of Energy in this classification.
Senator, if confirmed, you have my commitment to work with you in this committee to bring about some transparency and really get after the heart of this, which is the safety and health of our airmen, guardians, and their families. Absolutely.
Thank you. I want to talk about CCAs in the future at Creech Air Force Base, which again is in southern Nevada, so Colonel Borders, with the arrival of Experimental Operations Unit at Creech Air Force Base and the future deployment of Collaborative Combat Aircraft, CCA, it's easier to say CCA. If CCAs are to be permanently based at Creech, which is what I am hopeful for, I'm curious what new investments will be made to address current deficiencies in housing and support services at the base. Creech is very remote. It is outside Las Vegas, but very remote if you've ever been there. It has limited housing, limited services nearby, so airmen have to commute many miles from base where they live. It's even a longer commute for those who have to drop their kids off to childcare or utilize the services at Nellis Air Force Base, which is at the opposite end of the Las Vegas Valley. So, Colonel Borders, if CCAs are to be permanently based at Creech, what should the future of base infrastructure and support services look like? And will you prioritize these investments if confirmed? And do you know how this new mission would lead to a buildup of the base and personnel who work there?
Senator, this really reminds me more of our Cannon Air Force Base and Air Force Special Operations Command. RICKY bases or remote and isolated CONUS installations bring a host of challenges whenever you start talking about an inclusion of an aircraft or systems or more personnel, I would absolutely commit to you to look at some of the pathfinding initiatives that we developed in Air Force Special Operations Commands to include enhanced use leases, governmental, intergovernmental service agreements, to see what we can do to really kind of get after this in a more timely manner than what MILCON may bring.
Thank you. We appreciate that, as the classification of remote base is in this year's NDAA. I'm going to ask my last question quickly because I want to keep with you, Colonel Borders. We want to prepare for the next generation air power at the Nevada Test and Training Range. We look forward to the future of air dominance, the integration of uncrewed platform. That's what they do at Creech, like the CCA, Collaborative Combat Aircraft, with manned fighters, next generation air dominance. We're going to require advanced training in these environments, and Nevada is going to play a central role in the transformation of our military. Of course, known as the crown jewel of the Air Force, the Nevada Test and Training Range is the largest contiguous air, ground, and military training space in the lower 48 for testing and evaluations of weapon systems, tactics development, and advanced air combat training without interference from commercial aircraft. Modernization of the range has been among the Air Force top priorities to ensure our high-end training keeps pace with current and emerging threats and capabilities. I'm glad we were finally able to pass modernization FY24 NDA after many years of collaborative work between the Nevada delegation, Air Force Department of Interior, and local stakeholders. And so I just asked you quickly, we could take it off the record, but if you want to say one sentence and come to our office and talk to us about this, what are your priorities for future investment in Nevada Test and Training Range that is critical to our nation's security?
Senator, I agree with you with the criticality, and I look forward to working with you and coming to discuss this further. But any process that we do in the Air Force for my section will be a deliberate, repeatable, sustainable, transparent process.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator.